Focusing on the breath, we ease our minds by releasing any worries or concerns. Focusing on the breath. We set the spirit free by letting go of any grievances. Say to yourself, I am being. I am pure being. Although it is sometimes easy to identify with them, we are not our problems. Sometimes it seems as if there is nothing for us but our problems. We may have already seen that we really have only one problem. The problem of self-centeredness. That self-centeredness of ego, where we are always powerless. And so today we make a decision and a commitment to give our small selves to our larger self. And in this decision is the end of suffering. No more clinging, no more neediness. No more aversion. We bring our small selves to the light of our greater self. And when the light shines, we see that we are spirit. We are pure being. Part of God. All of the problems that we have had are just symptoms of an overarching sense of aloneness. And this is healed now. We know that we are not or never have been on our own. You can feel the connection right now. Feel the connection to all life. We take refuge. We take refuge in the power of the larger self, the larger community, and the larger principle. Surrender the ego, and we connect to our own true being. We say amen and amen. So, let's take...
The CD ended and it was about to get real loud with jazz. It was about 20 seconds before you were done. I had to run over there. It would have been fun.
Good.
Yeah.
Right. We'd have been all right. We were in our quiet place.
It might have scared somebody.
I was here.
So we're going to take inventory. We'll take a couple inventories. First, we start with America first. Start with that. Let's start with America first. Here is it's actually called this idea of America first. You know, it's not a new idea. We take inventory now of our national consciousness. It is ultra-nationalism is actually what it's called, America first. It was misguided when it first came out. It wasn't America first when the idea first came out. It was probably our little cave community first, right? That's probably when it first came out. It is an extreme nationalism and this is why we know it's extreme, because it promotes the interest of one state or people above all others. Or it could simply be extreme devotion to one's own nation. What we have lost sight of, not all of us, but I'm talking about in the national conversation, at least 40% of us have lost sight of the fact that there is no more tribe. For the good of humanity itself, we have to evolve past tribalism. But we are caught up in this idea that our problems are caused by someone else, and how this is how fascism, Nazism, this is how it starts. It starts with someone having the ability to look at the various either economic or could be a threat of war or something like that, and then blame it on another segment of the society. And to get these, to get people worked up, fascists believe that liberal democracy is obsolete. Now, what liberal democracy is a liberal political ideology and form of government in which representative democracy operates under the principles of classical liberalism. It is also called Western democracy. It is called what we thought we had. Fascists think that is obsolete, and they regard the complete mobilization of society under a totalitarian state as necessary to prepare a nation for armed conflict or to respond effectively to economic difficulties. So armed conflict. that would mean we've got a couple of those kind of things going on right now that allow the distraction to happen. We say first the terrorism, right? We have to give up our freedom in order to protect us from terrorism. We've got to tighten up. We got to tell people, if you see something, say something. And they don't just mean, by the way, something that's obviously dangerous. This whole idea of reporting on your neighbor, it's becoming more and more popular right now. Some crazy things are happening. Last week, 3 different occasions, some white people called the police because there were some people of color in places where they thought they shouldn't be. I mean, it turned into a big deal, right? There was a Yale student who had dozed off in the student common. So this idea of separation, it really feeds in to this fascist ideal. So our economic difficulties, and here's what they want to say. They want to say the reason we're having the economic difficulties, we got 2 of them going on with us now. The reason we have economic difficulties is because of the immigrants. The problem is we forgot that we're all immigrants, and the immigrants built the country, and will continue to do so, right? And then we got the other economic difficulty is because of the elites. Now it's very interesting how all of a sudden we've started to think that education, having a good education, being an intellectual person, is now somehow suspect. And got this huge focus on denigrating science and denigrating critical thinking. So where does all of this craziness come from? We have a leader who thinks that all the dictators in the world are like the best people. It's great. It's the craziest thing I ever heard of, and it seems to aspire to that same position. So now I only start with this. I start with this for a reason. The only reason that something like this can rise up is because of each person's individual fear. The only way that these ideas can come to the front, the only way that you can feel threatened by a person who is not like you, is because you are afraid of them for some reason. You're afraid of them or what they represent. The only way that someone can come to power who wants to be an autocrat, the only way someone can come to power in a democratic society who wants to be an autocrat is if a whole bunch of people are afraid that their position in the society is eroding. So, now I'm going to put that aside, and we're going to talk about our own inventory. This is the week that we do that in the 6-month cycle. So here's this idea. Harmony has been lost. Okay. Now you may say we never had harmony. That really, as a society, there was always these undercurrents, but it was not always like this. I don't remember it being this disconnected, even in the late 60s when we were having all the war protests and things. Anyway, it's harmony. When we have inner conflict, it is impossible to be in harmony with those around us. So this is what I'm going to suggest right off the bat. The only way we can be having all of these problems with everybody else outside of us, and I'm talking about ourselves individually and ourselves as a society, the only way that we can be having these problems with the outside world is if there's conflict within us. Because that's where it comes from. That's the only place that it can come from. So our personalities, being somewhat fragmented, project their own disquiet out into the world that we see. We should ask ourselves which attributes in us are causing disruptions with others. And here it is. Here's the inventory. Can we be intimate without being needy? Are we looking for others to make us feel whole? We could right now just take a moment and list in our minds the people in our lives that we feel anxious around. Who are we in discord with right now? And why? So, by the way, this thing that I gave you today, this is a template for a full entire inventory. All right, you could do your 4-step off of this sheet that I passed off, and it'll be a little bit different than any one that you've done before. So to be harmonious is to be in agreement with, and so that means what would I have to do? What would I have to do to come into this agreement with the people around me? What would it feel like? What would it just think about it. What would it feel like to be in accord with others? You can figure it out by just remembering someone you are in accord with, someone who you feel comfortable with, most of the time, and you feel like you have this, you feel kind of safe and at peace when you're with that person. And then take that feeling and extend it out to others. What would that feel like if you could feel that way with everybody? Now, I'm not suggesting we're going to become perfect by doing this, going through this process, but it is an exercise that will allow us to grow in that direction. What would it feel like to be in coherence with life itself? What are the issues that we're struggling with right now? Later today, write them down. Write them down, get a picture of them in your mind, and then ask, what would it be like if the fight was over? What does that feel like? If we just woke up tomorrow morning and there was no more conflict, well, let's just start with this. No more conflict in our family. No more conflict at work. No more conflict in our community. You can just extend it like that. What would it feel like if you woke up and there was no more conflict in the society? Now listen, this isn't ideal. It is not going to happen all the way. It's just not going. Do not get this idea that we're going to all of a sudden have this utopian society. It's not going to happen. But when we hold this image in our mind, we become a center of peace that we then can extend this sense out to the others around us. And it's not going to become perfect. Okay, here comes the sex part, okay? Open your eyes. So look at, here's the question. Are we bodies or are we spirit? Some have said that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Course in Miracles says that the body is not us, that it is neutral, and that it will do as it is instructed to do. It also points out that the body should not be abused or neglected. Further, it states that the body is best used as a communications device, and that the communications should be love. So, as far as our sexuality is concerned, it seems clear that it can be helpful or not. It's based on self-centeredness. It's based on just self-gratification. Probably not be helpful. And even in that case, even if it's like, even the idea of between consenting adults, everything is fine, I'm just saying, going to be singularly unsatisfying in any kind of deep way. So if we are obsessed with it, if we are obsessed with certain people who we see simply as objects of our desire, if we're involved in some kind of compulsive activity, you probably want to write that down. Take a look, see what the patterns are like. Do we feel ashamed? This is so germane. Do we feel ashamed of our sexual proclivities? And if we do, is this because of some kind of societal pressure? Or is it because we may have hurt some of our partners? Bodies are trying to connect. Bodies are trying to connect. And it's not just a biological imperative. It's a natural spiritual desire to return to oneness. So we'll think about this as we go through this inventory. We want to let these connections be steps on the path that returns us to love. If we want to affect any kind of change in the society, in our communities, and then growing from community into the rest of the world, if we want to affect any kind of change, if we want to be a force for good, we have to begin with ourselves, and we have to begin with kindness. So here's this next piece. The Buddha calls us to loving kindness. Calls us to loving kindness, and every spiritual path that there is addresses this tenet in one way or another. The practice of kindness enables us to extend good thoughts and actions to others. We affirm happiness, peace, freedom from suffering for ourselves and all others. So doing this is very difficult if we have been abused. And if we, as a result, may have become abusers. So we want to address this. We want to address these issues. And we ask ourselves, in this inventory, we ask ourselves, have I ever been exploited, misused, manipulated, taken advantage of? In what ways have I experienced ill treatment, violence, neglect, molestation? And have I ever been the perpetrator of any of these? I know it's not pleasant to think about. Writing them down would probably be painful, but it's the beginning of healing. We can move on from abuse. We can get over being abused. And we can even overcome being an abuser. I've seen it happen. Over time, we will come to say, may I be happy. May I be at peace. May I be free from suffering. And also we will say, may you be happy. May you be at peace. And may you be free from suffering. And actually mean it. So there's some cheesy self-help stuff from, well, maybe 20 years ago as it really got big. Or the guy said, I want you to go stand in front of the mirror and look at yourself and say, I love you. You're great. But listen, the affirmation for this next meditation is, I am good. I am good. I am good. So think about it. Is that hard to say? Is that hard to say to yourself, I am good? Does it feel weird? If, as we have said, God is all good and we are part of God, then wouldn't we be good? The ego wants to deny it. So first and foremost, we are good because we are part of God. Further, we will find that our own will is actually goodwill. If we don't understand that right now, we will. We will come to know that. We will come to be able to work with that every single day. The essence of us is pure and loving spirit. And that essence is trying to express itself in all these things that we do, in thoughts and actions. These spiritual attributes are present in all of our temporary abilities. So we should write some things down here so that we can allow these things to grow. We review our strengths. What are we good at? What do we like? What are our past accomplishments? You can figure out here what you should do in life. By doing this, you can figure out what your actual vocation is in life. What are we good at? What do we like to do? What are our past accomplishments? What are our goals that we would like to accomplish? Short term, long term. What are our strengths that we can bring to bear in our daily efforts? What skills do we have? What talents have we demonstrated? What qualifications have we earned over the years? Let us remember that our various abilities are just symbols of our goodness. And they are gifts to us. And the gifts that we're going to give to others. Be unguarded. We all have secrets. We all have secrets, or maybe, perhaps, we have already revealed all of our secrets to someone else. Probably not. But even if we had at some point, we possibly have acquired some more secrets since then. Doubtless, it's a good idea to have a confidant with whom we can be totally honest with, so that when we find ourselves with a personal secret, we can unburden ourselves without actually worrying about them, running and telling somebody else. But first, if we have something important that we have not included in this inventory, it'd be a good idea to put it down on paper now, about later. In the course of our inventory, if we've left anything out, we need to put it down. Our memory is affected by how we tell our stories. Our memory is affected by how we tell our stories. Exaggeration and minimization changes how we think about and remember the events of the past. So, if we have been dishonest in anything that we have written, we disclose it. We disclose ourselves fully, at least on paper. And these old negative attributes of the past can end. So we can open ourselves to change by relinquishing our secrets. And this whole thing, and the reason that we talk about this once every 6 months, is that we are trying to get an insight into ourselves. We're trying to examine ourselves. And this is an ancient idea that the unexamined life is not worth living. So we need to be paying attention to what's happening. So our capacity to see the truth is expanding. Our efforts at inventory allow us to gain an accurate picture of our present condition, our understanding of ourselves, our understanding of others. It deepens through this work. Intuition is a growing awareness that operates at a level that we may not have been previously aware of. We begin to quickly see straight through to our own previously hidden motivations. Our judgment clears, is this ignorant fear, this ignorant, self-centered fear is lifted. And our judgment clears. And we begin to be able to look at ourselves, to see ourselves and all others in the light of wisdom. And what I usually say is in the light of God's wisdom. When we get rid of this self-centered fear, we actually put our consciousness into that greater consciousness so that we can then see things clearly from the perspective of the larger self. Letting go of negative judgments. Letting go of prejudice that we may have been brought up with. Our minds may have been polluted. You can be sure all of our minds polluted in one way or another with the prejudices of the past. We have a chance to be free of it. Never be free of it if we don't write this stuff down and look at it clearly. What's going on in our own minds? What's going on? What is it? What do our actions tell us about our feelings? What do our feelings tell us about our thoughts? What do our thoughts tell us about our beliefs? Because this is where we have to go. We have got to get to the core of our beliefs and work every day to release these. And it's not like we got to get in there with a chisel and start chipping things away. What we have to do is actually be able to give them up for new ideas. To say to the spirit that is within us, to say, I do not want this thought. I do not want this hate. I do not want this fear. Give me something else. Appreciation of our own attributes and those of others mitigates our previously negative outlook. Over time, our view can become so refined that we will easily penetrate these illusions of the ego. We will see them immediately as soon as they occur. Not that thought. I don't want that thought. I don't want fear. Give me love. Give me love instead of fear. We are moving out of darkness. We're actually taking our darkness and presenting our darkness to the light. This is what we are doing in this inventory process. We're coming out of grievance into gratitude. Out of the cell, the prison cell of self-centeredness into the freedom of self-knowledge. So what would a person, a group of people who sit and take a good look at who they are, not afraid, not worried about what they are going to find, but actually look at it, would that group of people then fall prey to this Nazism, to this fascism that is creeping into our society today? No, you will not, because you will see clearly that someone is trying to manipulate your fear to turn you against your brothers and sisters. Take a look. Take a look. Write it down. That's enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.